days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about 49ers free agent wide receivers. And there's a plethora of free agent wide receivers, none of which made very much money last year. So the 49ers are going to have some decisions here as they try to refill out this 49ers receiver position.
You are correct, Ant. There was not a lot of money made last year. The only person on this list that made a decent amount of money was a tight end that we're going to talk about, who's probably his days are probably numbered in San Francisco.
It's going to make Grant come.
Yes, Grant will cry. He will be upset. He will finally officially have to change his header. And if you don't know what we're talking about, we'll get to it. Don't worry about it, Cutback crew. Make sure you hit the like button right now. Subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss any more of this incredible free agent content that we have to cover. There's technically 7 free agents, in theory, 7 guys that could re-sign, but we're not going to talk about River Craycraft because the 49ers have already cut him. Just assume that there is a chance, barring injury, that River Craycraft could be back in some sort of capacity.
Especially on the 90-man, yeah.
Accurate, Ant. Accurate, but I think we all want River Craycraft nowhere near this roster. It'd be better for the wide receiver room if River Craycraft is nowhere near this roster. And now we move on to the names that actually could have an impact for the 49ers in this upcoming season, the first of which is a guy who a lot of people have forgotten about. A lot of people have forgotten about this name. This is the name that we took a lot of flack for, Ant. Took a lot of flack for early in the season. We kept saying it was Richie James and a couple other people competing for spots. It was Richie James versus Travis Benjamin, Richie James versus Juwan Jennings, Richie James versus Jalen Hurd. We kept saying these things and kept saying, hey, he's got a lot of drops. Hasn't really done anything in the return game. Because of those things, he could end up not making the roster. And he ends up getting hurt before any of that comes to pass. And he ends up getting put on IR. He makes it through the IR process. So the Niners are able to reclaim him. But now he's going to be a free agent coming into this season. Is it still the end of Richie James in San Francisco?
I don't know. I think they really did like Richie. But I don't know exactly what this wide receiver room is going to look like. So I think he is an option. I'm not going to put it out there that he's for sure going to be back or he's for sure going to be gone. I think he's one of those fringe guys where if the 49ers are able to bring the players in that they want to bring in at the wide receiver position, then Richie will be expendable. But if they're not, they'll go ahead and bring him back because he does have the skill sets that you're looking for as far as being a return guy as well. He's not as dynamic as a return guy as some of the other guys that the 49ers had. In fact, Travis Benjamin did a better job returning, in my opinion, at the end of the season than Richie James did. But they tried the Brandon Ayuk experiment, and that didn't seem to work. So I think they are going to be looking for a return guy. So they could go back to Richie James, but we'll see. I think that this is going to be a tougher decision than just, we liked him, but now we're ready to move on. I think it's going to be really coming down to who they signed before that, what Kyle is looking at strategically to put each piece, because he likes these receivers to do different things. He likes to have different skill sets that he can use during the football game, but they all have to be able to block, and Richie can block, so that's something that he's going to be looking for. But we'll see also how he recovered from his injury.
That's going to be the key thing, is where he's at in his recovery process. If he recovered very well and there's no setbacks and things of that nature, then this is someone you can definitely expect to be on the 90-man roster because he's not going to take up a lot of money. It's going to be on the low ends of the $1 million range is roughly where his contract will be. He had a cap hit of $939, I think, this past season, being on IR and things of that nature. He basically, when he came into San Francisco, he signed a 4-year, $2.5 million deal, then made the roster immediately in that 2018 season. So this is a guy who isn't going to cost you a whole heck of a lot of money, but it's a big but. Not a lot of production to go with it. So if you're counting on bringing this guy in and not a lot of guaranteed money, and if you're able to move off of him, and it's very cap friendly for the team. Should he not make the 53-man roster, then very positive, good things for the San Francisco 49ers. We'll see. I think this is definitely a better option than a River Craycraft would be to make the 90-man roster. I would much rather see Richie James than River Craycraft, and if that's what you're telling me, right, is you got to bring one of these guys in. We need a couple of these wideouts to come back to just fill out the 90-man and see if they can compete for a roster spot. Give me Richie James.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be also hard, for him to make this team. The 49ers have the 3 guys at the top, and I think before this, Richie James was one of the 3 guys at the top. And then eventually he got surpassed by other players, and they just started looking for other options. But the 49ers have been searching for a lot of production from this wide receiver room for a while. They've searched in the draft, which they hit on Deebo Samuel, they hit on Brandon Ayuk, and it appears they hit on Juwan Jennings as well. So that's the three guys at the top, and then the other positions they're gonna have to fill out. As they started moving through the season, they started playing more 3 receiver sets, and so I'm guessing that they're gonna want to keep 5 or 6, receivers, probably 6, the way that they're playing it right now. So there's gonna be 3 spots available more than likely. Is Richie James one of those guys? Only if they feel like his special teams is something that they need. If not, I think they'll send him down the line. They'll be looking to improve the position because Kyle is definitely trending toward a more physical receiver, but I do think he wants somebody that can take the top off as well.
He definitely wants that. And speaking of special teams and guys that have stepped up in the special teams role, we're not going to talk about Travis Benjamin. We'll get to him after this one. Trent Sherfield, a guy that kind of came out of nowhere, really wowed some people and opened some eyes in training camp with the big plays that he was having. And some of those coming from Trey Lance, and with Trey Lance pegged to be the starter next year, kind of already a little bit of a chemistry built in there with Trent Sherfield,
Right.
plus the impact he brought on special teams alongside Trenton Cannon. Is this a guy who, I think you and I both believe if the Niners can bring this guy back in, at least for the 90-man, and have him compete yet again for a roster spot, this is something they want to do. This is someone that we've seen do stuff within this offense. Does this make sense, and how much is it going to cost San Francisco?
Well, I think it does make sense because of his impact on special teams. Those, part of the reason that these guys at the end of the receiver room were on the team was because of special teams.
Accurate.
And so that's where he adds a lot of value. I know he made a little under, $1 million last year. I think it was like $970,000. So he's affordable. I think you could pay this guy, a little over $1 million, give him a little bit of a raise, bring him back, know that you're going to have the impact that he brings on special teams. But you're right, he had some chemistry with Trey Lance, and he proved that he could, go out there and catch the football. He's not who everyone thought he was coming out of training camp. That is the scary part about training camp. Sometimes you get an inflated idea of who someone is. Or a deflated idea of who someone is by how they play in training camp, and that doesn't always translate to football games. So I think that we know who Trent Sherfield is. He's an adequate receiver who's very good on special teams. If you sign him with that thought process, then yeah, he can help your football team. So I think the special teams is going to help him along the way. He's more valuable than Richie James in that area, so he's more likely to come back. Plus, he proved himself to be a very good blocker.
A very good blocker, and he developed in that area. He's got a little bit of an attitude to him and a swag as well that
he does.
The room kind of feeds off of, and a lot of guys have his back and are at times almost having to reel him back in a little bit, but I would rather him be reeled back in than being a softie out there in space. So I do like the Trent Sherfield signing. Yes, much inflated idea of what he was coming out of training camp. You and I both said, we didn't see a whole lot of this guy on film. We don't see it. Doesn't make a sense, but he could surprise us. Who knows? And he came out and surprised everybody with the training camp he put in place and the product he put on the field and his impact on special team, which was the area that we both said, when we talked about and watched film, this is the area where he's been the most successful as a player coming in.
Yeah.
So if he's able to have a huge impact plus do something on the offensive end, he's probably going to secure a roster spot. And then he easily did that. He easily accomplished that. Will he be able to do it again? We'll see. The good news is for him is if Trey is going to be the guy going into next year, you do have a little bit of a built-in chemistry. You've taken a lot of reps with him. You've gotten very familiar with him. I won't be surprised if he goes down there with BA this offseason for a little bit of time and tries to put some work in with Trey and get himself on the same page.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. And that was the thing. Coming out of training camp, everyone wanted us to take fat L's. You guys said Trent Sherfield, wasn't going to be a big time receiver.
He is wide receiver 3, Ant.
Yeah, we were taking. They wanted us to take L's. We took no L's.
Oh, we took no L's. We weren't wrong.
Yeah,
he's
a special teams guy. We said it. He's great. And then can he be an adequate receiver at times? Yes, he can.
Can he do some things and be in the right spot?
But he can't be your wide receiver 3. If he's your wide receiver 3, we don't have to worry about that because Juwan Jennings. But if he's your wide receiver 3, you need to improve your wide receiver position. And it's not anything negative on him. It's just there's just that skill level, and I think that he's a 4, he's a 5. In those areas, he's very adequate for what he does, and his special teams puts him over the top because he's one of the best special teams players in the league, I believe.
And he's 25 years old, going to be 26 here soon. And
yeah,
I think he actually turns 26 in about 15 days. So
yeah,
happy early birthday to Trent Sherfield. But besides the happy early birthday for Trent Sherfield, he's a young guy still. He still has a lot of development that he could go through.
Oh, for sure.
So bring him back in, get him on a nice 2-3 year deal that's very cheap, and see what you can do with him over the next few years and see if he can improve upon and expand upon his role. If he can, great. If he doesn't, then hopefully, you haven't locked yourself into this cap situation where you end up having to pay him money if you have to move off of him. The Niners will be very smart about it, but Trent Sherfield is a guy and a name that does make sense for them to bring in and isn't going to cost him a bunch of money. I think he made what, 920 was his base salary last year?
Yeah,
Yes.
It was 920. Yeah.
920 was his base salary last year. So not a lot of money there, and I'm all good for that.
Yeah.
That's going to be roughly where it's going to be. Travis Benjamin, though, the guy who they brought in, veteran presence, veteran kind of guy. Everything carried over from the COVID year where he opted out.
Right.
But now he's a free agent yet again. And towards the end of the season, we saw Travis playing a big role. But for the most part of the season, he was on the practice squad. When he did get called up and activated, we saw him being utilized occasionally in deep shot scenarios, deep shot situations. But this is a guy, again, who took a lot of reps with Trey Lance in practice with scout team. Would this make sense? He's going to be 30. He's 32 years old. He won't turn 33 towards the end, till the end of next season. He definitely still has the top end speed. We saw the impact he could have on special teams in the return game. Can the 49ers bring this guy back in? Does this make sense for even if it's just for the 90-man roster at the beginning of the season?
90 men, yes, because he was a return guy for you at the end of the season. You're right, he has the top end speed. But I think you're looking to upgrade at that position as far as the speed guy. Number one, Travis Benjamin is an absolute liability in the blocking area.
Accurate.
And that's something that Kyle Shanahan likes. But you had a quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo that didn't like to take the deep shot a lot. He didn't like to take those chances. So Travis Benjamin wasn't really utilized to his full potential. But I think they would like somebody else to fill that role. You know, they've tried to find guys throughout the years. They thought that different, especially Marquise Goodwin. I think he was the one that they wanted to be the best one that they could get. And he never really panned out to be the guy. But he had the most success in that position of any wide receiver the 49ers have had, is that guy that takes the top off the defense. So I think they're going to be looking to find somebody that can fill that role, especially with the wide receivers that they have. It feels like they need somebody that can do that to allow Deebo Samuel and those guys to operate underneath. So they'll be on the lookout for someone. Travis Benjamin is definitely an option because I think with Trey Lance, there will be more shots. And you saw when they played with each other, the first game that Trey started against Arizona, he went to Travis Benjamin early in that game. Now, I mean, they got Aramel a little bit, but I think a lot of that was nerves. But it just shows that, Travis Benjamin can get open. Just, is he going to be one of those top 6 receivers? I hope not. If he is, though, we know what his defined role is going to be. He's going to be someone that's going to take the top off the defense and someone that's going to try to give you a couple explosive plays a game.
And the underneath stuff, because the speed, he can get across the field, those middle crossers and things of that nature, that speedo concept that Kyle likes to run, he can thrive in those areas at times. The only problem with Travis is the physicality's not there. He doesn't have the same level of physicality that Brandon Ayuk has, Juwan Jennings has, Deebo Samuel has, even someone like Jalen Hurd had. Let's be realistic here and honest. Yeah, Jalen Hurd was hurt, but we saw him in training camp. We saw the practice after he got called out. You and I were both excited going to that practice. Jalen's going to come out today. He's going to come out in a big way. And he did come out, caught the football, and bullied through 2 or 3 guys, took some shots over the middle of the field, and we're like, oh, God, yes. Like, if this guy, oh, God, yes, we're going to love this. Travis Benjamin is not that guy.
No.
Not that guy, pal. Not that guy. He's just not. The physical aspect is not in his game. It's not in his forte. And that means you're going to lose something in the run game. You're going to lose something with the middle crossers being able to catch and run and bully through guys. He's a guy who's going to catch the ball and get down or get brought down immediately. His strength is the deep shot. It's the being able to stretch the defense over the top. But however, when you have a guy like that in that kind of defined role, it's very easy for defenses to be able to understand and key in on when he's on the field what you may be trying to do. And yes, you may catch them off guard, and yes, you may go some run sets and some run situations and things like that where you're able to expose a team because maybe they keep 2 high safeties and things of that nature. But we saw that against the Rams, and there wasn't a lot of execution up front. You take a little bit something else out when you put Travis Benjamin out there. If the Niners can upgrade it in the draft or upgrade it in free agency in another way, I would prefer you go that route. But as a 90-man roster guy to come in and compete, especially this first part of training camp, OTAs, things of that nature, I don't hate it. There are worse options in the world, River Craycraft, than Travis Benjamin.
Yeah, I think also he becomes more relevant because of Trey Lance. Trey Lance can move the pocket. Trey Lance can do things like that. But he also has the absolute cannon that he can get the ball down the field. Also, and if you want to go one-on-one on the outside and you want to allocate somebody to the box to try to stop the 49ers run game, he will 100% take that shot to Travis Benjamin. That's why a speed guy is needed. The question is, can they upgrade over Travis Benjamin, or is he the best guy that they're going to be able to have? Because I think that it can help in the run game. Because if you have to allocate one of those safeties to helping stop him over the top, and you keep somebody out of the box. And right now, that's big for helping this 49ers run game.
Accurate, Ant. Very helpful in helping out the run game. And speaking of guys who helped out this football team, helped in the run game, helped in the pass, Mohamed Sanu is another unrestricted free agent for the San Francisco 49ers this upcoming offseason. 32 years old, going to be turning 33 at some point. He's going to be his second year removed from the Achilles injury, and that's usually, where you start to get some of your steps back and, start to get yourself a little bit closer. What are you thinking on this? Because I think at this point, it'd be very hard for the 49ers to bring this guy back in, knowing what you have in Juwan Jennings right now.
I think this is it. I think he's gone now. I think that, Jawan Jennings went in and ripped that spot from him. And that's good. The things that Mohamed Sanu added weren't just on the field, but also in the locker room. He was helping nurture Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and bring those guys up. Deebo Samuel talked about the fact that, in 2020, they liked having Mohamed Sanu there, and that when he was cut, it affected that wide receiver room. They had Emmanuel Sanders. He was that person. They had Mohamed Sanu. Now that person's Deebo Samuel. Accurate. Deebo Samuel has, excelled into that position.
He's proven it now.
Yeah, and Mohamed Sanu was basically a coach in that room and a coach on that field, and he helped, raise those guys up. I think Kyle Shanahan loves Mohamed Sanu, but I think if he looks in the mirror, he's going to realize we don't really need Mohamed Sanu on this football team anymore. But we'll see. You never say never, but I think this would be the time to move on. We know who the top three guys are, and they're just going to roll with them. But they got to fill out this roster, and if Mohamed Sanu, ends up being one of the best guys, then yeah, they would bring him back. But I wouldn't be surprised if some other team doesn't reach out to Mohamed Sanu and sign him too, because I thought his play was good enough to warrant him still playing in the NFL.
I won't be surprised if it ends up being a team like the Raiders.
Yeah.
Vegas Raiders, they're close by. McDaniels, new team, new organization, getting some more veteran wideouts in that room to kind of change the culture a little bit with some poor decision-making top to bottom by a lot of players in that organization.
Right.
A guy like Mohamed Sanu would make sense there, and I think that would be a good place for him in the McDaniel systems, a system he's not unfamiliar with. So,
well, yeah, keep an eye on the Jets.
Jets would make sense
with
also.
Young wide receivers, and if Mike McDaniel goes to Miami, keep an eye on him.
That would be a good one as well, Ant. Another veteran guy that you could bring into that locker room there in that situation. But yeah, I agree with you on this. The reality is he made about 1.1 this year in the category, 1.1 million. You're going to be able to sign Juwan Jennings for a whole heck of a lot less than that. And why would you keep two guys who are similar when the young guy has already shown you he can go out there and get it done? The younger guy who's going to cost you less money can go get the job done at a very high level, can block, can catch on third downs. Did it in some of the biggest games this year for the San Francisco 49ers. Juwan Jennings has made Mohamed Sanu expendable, and as sad as that may be for Mohamed Sanu and sad as it may be for 49ers fans who liked Mohamed Sanu, it's a better thing and a better situation for the 49ers because your young guy that you drafted and have now developed has elevated to a point where you can improve the room in other ways, cheaper, more effective, more efficient ways.
Yeah, and Juwan Jennings' stats are through the roof. between the 5 touchdowns and I think it's like 15 catches for first downs. It was ridiculous. In the big moments, he made the big catches. He took over for the Kendrick Bourne role. He really did. And he, in my opinion, did it at a higher rate just because he was bullying people. Kendrick Bourne made a lot of big catches for the 49ers, but I feel like Juwan Jennings was making the same amount of catches and a little bit more. So I think they've got a nice improvement there. Plus, the 4th best wide receiver blocking in the entire NFL. That value alone means you want Juwan Jennings on the field, which means if you have Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Juwan Jennings, and you want all those guys on the field, that means you're running more 3 wide receiver sets. That means it's 1 tight end because you want to have Kyle Juszczyk out there as well.
Accurate.
So I think that there's going to be a little bit of change in philosophy about how Kyle Shanahan runs offense, where he ran a lot of 2 tight end sets before. Now he's going to run a lot more 3 wide receiver sets.
The KB was doing about 40 to 50 receptions for about 500 to 600 yards when he was in San Francisco. Juwan Jennings in his first year on the active roster playing for this team didn't really start playing until about week 7, week 8 of the season.
About when Mohamed Sanu went down, yeah.
Correct. So around week 8. So about half of the season for Mohamed Sanu goes 24 for 282 in his first stint with this team being on the active roster. Fantastic, 5 receiving touchdowns. He had a game with 2 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns in a single game. The big one against the Rams as well. Look, he was an absolute phenomenal piece for this team. He is an exclusive rights free agent as well, meaning he can only negotiate with the San Francisco 49ers, and his base salary this year was $660K. The Niners are going to be able to probably bring him back in for around $850,000. So under the $1 million mark, very, very cheap option. This just makes sense. You can book this as of right now going into the 2022 campaign. This is your wide receiver 3, and you're going to be paying him less than $1 million.
Yeah, and if for some reason he wasn't wide receiver 3, wow, your wide receiver room got a whole lot better. If somebody's
True.
able to come in there and supplant him, because we are all excited about what he can be in the future and his development. So yeah, he's wide receiver 3 right now. And if they improve something, if they get a top end guy, somebody that can take the speed off, because I have some ideas that we'll get into when we get into other free agents from other teams or guys that could be coming this way.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, and when you get some inside information about a guy that may want to be leaving his football team, right? Inside information going that way, but we'll get into all that eventually when we get into our free agents. But right now, yeah, I think Juwan Jennings is wide receiver 3, and the things that he does in the blocking game are something Kyle Shanahan values. But the big catches on third down and in the red zone mean a quarterback can count on you. And reliability is one of those things you look for in a wide receiver. And in the biggest moments, he's going to make the biggest plays. And you couple that with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, and shoot, you have 3 receivers that if you throw the football in their direction, they're going to make a play.
1,000% agreed, and now I am even more excited and more intrigued about everything that you just said, and I'm looking forward to this conversation when it eventually comes. And make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. You want to hear this inside information.
Yeah.
You want to hear who this potential free agent is that could be coming to San Francisco at the wide receiver position and locking up the wide receiver 3 position and maybe putting the Niners in situations where they go more 4 wide receiver sets, in parentheses with Deebo Samuel in the backfield.
Yeah, I'll just say it would make Travis Benjamin completely.
He's not on the 90-man roster.
No, he would be gone.
Yeah. Could do a lot of guessing. Cutback crew, leave your guesses down below in the comment section right now, and then let's talk about the last wide receiver tight end option. It is a tight end for the San Francisco 49ers. In fact, and it's not just a tight end. Of everyone we just named, he was the most expensive piece on the roster last year, having a cap hit of $1.58 million. Ross Dwelley, who went from tight end 2 to Grant Cohn, and a lot of people giving us crap when we came out and said, hey, maybe the Niners should look into Zach Ertz making a trade there to upgrade the tight end position. Hey, maybe they need to bring in a Delaney Walker and upgrade the tight end 2 position, because we felt Ross Dwelley was a better tight end 3 option for the 49ers than he was a tight end 2, because we haven't seen a lot in the development in the run game. He really hasn't grown as a receiving option, a receiving threat. He was more of a kind of a it's just this weird conglomeration of guy who has done some things when given opportunities, but not like overexceeded. When there's been no George Kittle in the way, Ross Dwelley hasn't burst onto the scene and made it very clear that he's the future of the tight end position for the 49ers. He's just been a good, decent piece who does some things and doesn't do some things well. And this year he took a big step back, ends up losing the tight end 2 spot to Charlie Warner. $1.5 million is what he made this last year. Is this guy coming back?
I don't know. I'm going to kind of talk this out right now. I think that Ross Dwelley, made some plays for the 49ers, especially in 2019. It felt like he was a guy that was emerging as one of those, tight ends that you could count on, and he could be a, adequate backup for George Kittle. And then it felt like in 2020, he took a step back. You had Jordan Reed come onto the scene, and he was making the plays in the receiving game, but Ross Dwelley was struggling in the run game. It almost seemed like there was a disconnect between him and the blocking ability. And that kind of was the reason that we looked at it and was like, wait, we got Charlie Warner, who is the blocking tight end. You're not going to use Ross Dwelley in that category. And Ross Dwelley hasn't shown in 2020 that he can be the receiving threat that you thought he was going to develop in from 2019.
True.
So the development kind of got stagnated. So you wonder if he reached his peak of what he could do for the 49ers. So, yeah, we were looking into tight ends. We were looking in them bringing in a free agent. We were looking into them getting someone in the draft. In fact, that's where I wanted them to address it. Because I felt like it could come down to
Kylan Granson.
Yeah, well, receiving wise, but I wanted the guy from Notre Dame.
Yes, Tommy Tremble.
Yeah, Tommy Tremble. Because he could do it all. He could block. He could do all the things you needed to do. He could receive the ball. But with Ross Dwelley, we thought it should come down to Dwelley and Warner, which one could win. And what we found during the season was Charlie Warner beat out Ross Dwelley and started getting all the significant snaps as tight end too. So yeah, I think that they would look to upgrade this position. I think last year was a little bit. For the Niners, they brought him back, but it was a no-brainer. It didn't seem like a no-brainer for us. We were questioning then whether they would bring him back. They ended up doing it. But I think now, could Jordan Matthews be an equivalent to Ross Dwelley with a more, high-end, top-end talent at the receiving position? So
possibly.
I think it's going to be up in the air. I think the 49ers could address the tight end position, but with them moving in the direction of more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, Could it also, maybe the 49ers don't carry 3 tight ends in the future. Maybe they only carry 2. It's going to be something that we're going to have to watch and see what happens.
It's going to be interesting, man. It really is. I don't think there's any way this guy's coming back. He made $1.5 million this year. He was a restricted free agent last year. He's an unrestricted free agent this year. Will there be a market for him? I don't know. Do I think some teams out there that are going to want to bring him in because he was in the system? He's been in the system for a while. He did have some success the last couple of years, possibly, but I'm just not there. I haven't seen the development on film. Every time I watch film, it seems like he gets worse. It seems like he's regressed. His route running is not better. He's not necessarily consistently getting open. He doesn't have that kind of speed to be a legitimate receiving threat, and he doesn't have the strength and the power to be a formidable blocking threat. They use him a lot in help situations where he has to help others or someone has to help him to create and finish off blocks. It's not a good thing for the 49ers. He's always been a guy who's had solid and sound technique. He just doesn't have the power to go with it. He was an undrafted guy to San Diego, and you can kind of see why. He doesn't have some of the physical tools that these other guys have, and I think it's just time. I think it's time to move on. I think it's time to go a different direction. I like Charlie Warner's development as a run blocker. We'll see if he can continue to develop in the pass catching area and aspect. Jordan Matthews showed some promise in the preseason as well in terms of developing as a blocker. I don't think he's that far off from being able to be at the level to produce in the blocking range as Ross Dwelley. He's already better as a route runner. I mean, it's just the natural inclination here with Jordan Matthews. He's already a better athlete. He's a better route runner. He's going to be able to get open at times. I do want them to address this, though. Maybe free agency. Free agency is going to be tough. There are a lot of guys. There are a lot of free agent tight ends this year, and some of them are looking to get paid the first time in their careers. And then you have guys like Zach Ertz where you don't know where his things lie. He's 31 years old. He's just starting to get healthy for the last couple of seasons. He may want to try and get one more big contract before he goes ring and clout chasing, but he already has a ring as well. You can't forget that.
Yep.
He won one with Philadelphia, so maybe that's not important to him. I don't think there's any way something like that happens. There may be some names out that they can go get in free agency, but I think their best option might be to try and hit it in the draft again.
Yeah, I think so. I think they will use a draft pick on a tight end. And they're going to have Jordan Matthews. They're going to have Charlie Warner and George Kittle. That'll be the tight end room unless somebody comes in and takes that spot. There could also be some, low under the radar tight ends that they bring in. I mean, last year was Michael Pruitt that they brought in.
True.
And without the injury, I believe Michael Pruitt would have made the football team.
Accurate.
And they would have ran with Charlie Warner and Michael Pruitt, and Ross Dwelley would have been gone then. So I think that this is something they'll continue to address. This is an area that we felt needed to be improved during the offseason. They did not really improve it.
Nope.
But now I think they're going to address that. They addressed the tight end coach itself, where they're looking to make an improvement there, and now they're going to do this. So some changes for the tight end position are definitely coming, and I think the 49ers are definitely looking to upgrade that position as one of the ones that they most need to upgrade.
Very much going to be the case, Ant. I know that's not one that's talked about a lot. It is talked about a lot here because in the past, the tight end position has been very important to the 49ers. Could there be a shift coming? Possibly, but could that also mean there's a shift coming in what they're looking for in that tight end too? Are they going to want to go back to more of a Jordan Reed style kind of hybrid power slot guy who can go out there and receive the ball? You don't necessarily need him in the run aspect because you can have formations and packages where you have him out there with Kittle, Debo in the backfield, and Kyle Juszczyk, and it's a very odd package where teams don't really know what's going on. Very well could be the case, but Cutback crew, let us know down below what you think. Which wide receivers do they need to bring back? Which tight end do they need to bring back? And by which, I mean, does Ross Dwelley need to be in San Francisco yet again? Or is it time to move on? Is it time to go a different direction? We want to hear from you down below. And while you're commenting away, don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell, because there is still one more free agent special to go over. The defensive line, which is a big one. It's a huge one. It's one of the biggest pieces for the San Francisco 49ers, and we're excited to talk about it.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. I'm looking to talk all about these guys. Defensive line is going to be something the 49ers are going to have to address. They have some guys that are coming up, as unrestricted free agents that are going to be able to move around. We saw how impactful that defensive line was, and Chris Kasarik is going to want to bring a lot of these guys back. I'm sure the 49ers will, but at what price? Are they going to be able to retain Arden Key and DJ Jones? It's gonna be a tough conversation to have, but we're about to have it, and that's gonna be an exciting video to get into.
It's getting hot, Ant.
Yeah,
it's getting hot. Niners aren't gonna have all the cap space in the entire world, but they do have some. Can they bring all these pieces back? We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna discuss it. We're gonna take a look. We'll see you on that one, and until that time, stay safe.
Remember, the right way
is always the 49ers way.